Thanks for staying with us. Last week, the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, ordered its standby force to restore constitutional order in Niger Republic. However, Nigerians are rebuffing the plan of the heads of state of the ECOWAS to deploy soldiers in Niger Republic to oust the military junta, although it was just their own actually called on standby. Joining us on the show right now, especially to review the updates, is the permanent representative of Nigeria to the United Nations Office and other international organizations at Geneva, Ambassador Humphery. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you so much for having me.
Good to have you. Good morning. So the whole of last week the conversation was about the fact that the military had been put on red alert to be on standby in case of a need for an offensive. However, over the weekend, the junta had offered some dialogue, opportunity to dialogue. What do you make of this new development?
Thank you so much. I think the dialogue we are talking about now is what should have preceded all of these events once the coup took place in Niger. The saber rattling was not necessary. And the sanctions and stuff imposed seem to have come ahead of any discussions. So right now, it appears sanity is returning on both sides, the sides of the coup makers, and rational thinking seems to have taken over in the ECOWAS heads of authority. So we are looking forward to peace, stability, security in Niger, because the West African sub-region really cannot afford another military conflict at this time. So it's a good development. We need to see where it is going.
Well, as a follow-up to that, what do you think dialogue should entail? Because the junta is insisting on detaining the president, but we don't know what exactly do you think should be the compromise from ECOWAS' point of view. So what do you think the dialogue should look like?
You know, this dialogue thing has to have a certain dimension that is really new. I don't think that the emphasis of the ECOWAS should really be on releasing and reinstating President Bazoum to office as the leader of Niger Republic. That should be incidental. I think the ECOWAS thing should be thinking of conditions to restore democracy in that country. The thing that is new is, if you're looking at the Nigerian population and the reactions they have had since, you could see a lot of anti-French, anti-Western sentiments, being demonstrated in the streets of Niamey and everywhere else the people have come. So I think ECOWAS should be thinking of something to give to the young thugs who are making these coups, these young soldiers. There must be something they need, something they can give to the people who are already supporting this coup to say, yes, we prefer democracy, but there's something else we need. That thing they need will be ECOWAS and, in fact, the African Union sitting down, calling France to a sit-down, a negotiation on the terms on which these countries have been governed since after they gained independence.
Right.
Those 11 conditionalities under which these Francophone African countries have been operating, is it not long enough that these things are reviewed? Should France indeed not begin to think of allowing these countries, Francophone, West African, Central African countries, to really operate as strictly sovereign countries in charge of their own foreign policies, in charge of their own monetary and financial policies, in charge of their natural God-given resources. Must everything be dictated for them from Paris?
Okay, let me get a few more questions
Probably
in for you.
That's what the...
Go ahead,
Ambassador.
I think that's what the ECOWAS should be concentrating upon.
Ambassador, I love the fact that you're taking us to deal with the fundamental issues, and it's been an educative conversation for the Nigerians who are just looking at it from the fact that, oh, there's a coup, we want peace, we are doing business with them, to analyzing the issues that led to this coup and how ECOWAS should play in this space. Based on your insight and based on the challenges that led to the coup in the first place, how do you feel the ECOWAS leadership should address the concerns? Should we just tell, obviously you already told us at the beginning of that we shouldn't say they should reinstate. How do you think we can intervene with Francophone countries in ECOWAS to help them find a long-term peaceful solution in their relationship with France?
In fact, that indeed is the crux of this whole matter. I believe that if France comes to the negotiating table with the ECOWAS and the African Union, and they agree to begin to treat these countries as sovereign countries, remove all conditionalities that tend to suggest that neocolonialism, in fact, some people would call it harsher names, that neocolonialist tendencies are removed from the governance, the relationship between Paris and these Francophone countries in West Africa and Central Africa. Then ECOWAS would have achieved something which we should have achieved so many decades ago when we say that Africa has come of age. Africa coming of age means independence in its true sense, and not just sovereignty in name, while the real power and the exercise of authority resides in another country's capital. I will give you a clear example. In 2020, after almost 3 decades of negotiations, ECOWAS heads of state had agreed that the ECO, the sub-regional currency of ECOWAS, was to be launched. And you can imagine the amount of economic development and progress, a common trading currency, in settling debts and settlement of trade issues in the sub-region would amount to. In fact, some estimates think this could improve trade in West Africa and beyond for over 40% of what exists now. But on the very brink of launching the ECO, France intervened, and the ECO has not seen the light of day since then. The CFA franc was renamed the ECO, and it's not even functional as a currency to serve the West African countries.
Okay.
Okay, sir. So as it looks now, it's looking like it's the inability of African government to deliver true dividends of democracy is the real cause of the recurrent coups that we've seen on the continent. What is your take on this system of government? Do you think it should be modified and tailor-made for, the African continent instead of just totally, adopting the Western way of democracy?
In fact, that's another dimension to the problems that ECOWAS and the African Union face. The thing that the African Union started called peer review mechanism is simply not working. Take a look at what is happening in every country. We talk of democracy, but what is dividends for the people? Democracy is not supposed to mean poverty. It doesn't supposed to mean lack of health care facilities, lack of educational facilities, lack of access to all the fundamentals of life. So, African countries remain at the bottom of the global rung of poverty and disease and want. Those are the fundamental things that a true democracy is supposed to deliver to its people. As for copying Western democratic principles and values verbatim, that's a debate that has been on for a very long time. We don't need to do that. Take a look at the issue of human rights. Yes, the Western society can tolerate something like LGBT, this lesbian, but in African culture, that cannot fit into any democratic model that African countries and African peoples would accept. So yes, there is need. Even in Nigeria itself, where we copied, where we are said to have copied the American presidential system, it is damn too expensive. And the costs of running this version of democracy for a poor African country does not justify it as something we should adopt exactly the way it is run in America. So yes, there is need for African countries to review the content of the democracy we are running.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, sir. Also, I feel that we should also look at the dilemma that ECOWAS is in right now. It's one thing to say that, you know, as you've discussed all the issues with democracy as is being practiced here in Africa and the benefits or non-benefits thereof. But we have accepted, I believe, as a continent that democracy is the way to go. We feel that Africans, regular Africans can still get, you know, human rights and all the benefits that should come with it, even though we have issues with how it's run right now. Are we saying that ECOWAS should not take any stance in entrenching and instilling democracy across Africa, or West Africa, I mean, because of how it is badly run or because of the issues thereof? Is democracy the issue, or is it just corruption and we need to work on that?
Actually, there are two elements in this. The content of the democracy we have chosen to run, that is one. We have described its shortcomings. Some of it has to do with the corruption you have mentioned. Some of it has to do with the desperation with which office seekers tend to come to office. So the process of democracy needs revisit, because elections have to, in a proper democracy that is, elections have to actually reflect the true wishes and choices that people make. That is one aspect. The other aspect is the content which you have described. If you bring very extraneous measures, like take a look at the income divide between elected and appointed political officials and the population itself, you see a very huge gap. You find it so difficult to justify, say, somebody taking home 10 million naira in a month, and those who work morning till night, every day, cannot take home 20,000 naira in the same month. That gap is, if it is democracy, it is a wrong application of democratic values. Yes, those are some of the elements that get people riled up. And if the military takes over, they are very happy to come on the street and say, no.
Okay,
you can't do this.
Let me go on a very short break. When we come back, we continue this conversation with the ambassador. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Stay tuned. Your View will be right back. Stay tuned. Your View will be right back.